Hi, Decode. This is Zack Kass, calling to you from Hong Kong today. So excited to be here. First of all, as a big WordPress user, my site, zackkass.com, shameless plug, is built on that. And as long as I can remember, I've been building websites using that platform. It's so nice to be here to spend time with all of you today. A little bit about me. I have spent the last 14 years in AI, and quite honestly, that has been an incredible journey. What I came to realize in the last five, having spent 300 days in boardrooms, is that most people, from senior executives at Fortune 1000 companies to my mom, all have the same question at this point, which is what happens next? Everyone is so eager to understand, where is the world going? And quite honestly, are we going to be okay? As much as all of you in the room are eager to better understand how can you use these tools to improve your job, we can talk about that. What we really all need to agree on is this okay? And I'm here to say, I think it's amazing. I call this talk towards AGI. AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. It's a theory that says at some point AI will be capable of all intellectual tasks as a human. That alone isn't that fascinating until you apply the scale of machines. It's equivalent to asking the question, what if we had 100 million oncological researchers studying the cure for cancer? AGI also purports, if you extrapolate enough, that AI might be the last technology that humans ever invent. That is both terrifying and also wonderful, because it basically suggests we may soon enter this really remarkable virtuous cycle where technology begets technology and we catapult ourselves forward in a really incredible way. Today, we're going to cover how did we get here, where are we going? And I want to be really clear that I don't expect you to believe any of the where are we going. It's my vision for the world, and quite honestly, it's a bold one. But I think it's really important that everyone here actually appreciate what might happen, in large part because if we don't talk about it, I worry that one, we will not be prepared, and two, we might actually self-fulfill ourselves into some pretty weird prophecies. So first of all, how did we get here? Well, most of you in this room by now are familiar with GPT. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It is born from a paper written in 2017 by 12 Google researchers, which basically proposed that we had been building AI models all wrong. And then in fact, instead of statistical machine learning, which built models and thought of things in straight lines, it proposed the idea of parallelization, that models should think much more like the human brain. And the easy way to understand this is if you read a large novel, at the end of the novel, you're able to build relationships between the characters and the events in the beginning and the characters and the events at the end without actually flipping back through all the pages. That's the simple idea of the transformer. And what's incredible is it worked. It catapulted the industry forward in profound ways and led to, among other things, GPT. The second thing that happened was an explosion in the amount of available compute. What we discovered in 2010 was that the amount of compute we thought we needed to build AGI was basically that equivalent to a sovereign nation. And quite honestly, everyone sort of wrote it off. Well, the zero interest rate environment, major improvements in how we built the computers, and major improvements in how we ran the models on them led to this incredible new availability effectively in compute. And if you had asked someone in 2010, would we have this much available compute by 2024, they would have said categorically no. And that changed the game. The third thing that changed the game on a similar scale was the amount of available data. The internet grew multiple orders of magnitude between 2010 and 2020. And that alone is interesting. The other thing that happened is the internet became much, much more structured and clean. And in many ways, projects like Common Crawl became this incredible gift to these researchers who finally felt like they were able to build these models at scale that they had always dreamed of. We went from building models with hundreds of millions of parameters to building models with almost 1 trillion parameters. And the last thing, and this is anything that if anyone in this room is going to appreciate, it's this: publishing. For a long time, AI has been an open source project. Everyone in this community was eager to publish and post their success and how they got there. Now, Unfortunately, it looks like that's changing. And I don't know that that's necessarily a terrible thing, but it will slow some progress as companies become more insular in how they are actually developing things. But papers like this, the Transformer paper, are these seminal moments where some of the smartest people in the industry were sharing their findings with each other. This is critical to our success. Really quickly, on the Transformer, we went from building systems that think in straight lines to building systems that think like your brain in parallel. And I cannot stress enough how important this is. It's important in no small part because it'll make you sound really smart at your next dinner party, but it also clearly explains why we've seen this profound improvement in these models. Many of you can recall AI in 2010 or 2012. It was just bad. Today, it's remarkably good. As a result, we've observed this incredible improvement in LLM performance and LLM size. Between 2015 and 2021, these models gained a lot of performance, as evidenced by these slides. Well, that happened again between 2021 and 2024. Now, we know almost with a high degree of certainty that LLM performance will continue to improve. We are still on the superlinear curve. What's fascinating is LLM size may start to decrease. And recently, Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, talked about the end of large language models. This theory that, in fact, the models will start to compress and distill to a much, much smaller place. This is incredibly good news for everyone, especially the open source community, because in open source, we need these models to be much smaller in order to publish and train them. As a result in all this, models are getting way less expensive. So we are observing right now that models' prices are falling at a much faster rate than Moore's Law predicted. GPT-3, when it came out, was $10 per million tokens. Today, it's less than 10 cents per million tokens. That's an incredible improvement over just under 4 years. GPT-4 is already less than half the cost it was a year ago. I think we are headed towards a very abundant future. And this is the part where I warned you in the beginning you might disagree with. Now, if you work in an open source world, I think by definition you are a little more optimistic than everyone else because you believe in a more utopian society where we can share and contribute to projects together. And quite honestly, that's one of the most beautiful things about being at this conference, which is I think what I'm about to tell all of you might actually resonate a little. That being said, it's okay if you don't agree with me. I really just want to give you a marker by which to consider these events. Because one of the sad things today about the world we live in is that most of media makes a ton of money propagating these ideas that the world is definitionally bad because of technology. That in fact, we aren't headed towards a utopia, we're headed towards something like a dystopia or post-apocalyptic world. And I just don't think that's true. First of all, I think the most important thing that anyone in this room needs to appreciate is that we are quickly going to need to learn to distinguish between technological thresholds and societal thresholds. And by that, what I mean is we're going to have to discover that a lot of the things that we thought machines couldn't do, well, in fact, they can. And then the real question becomes, what do we want them to do? This is a very morbid fact, but 50,000 people die on the U.S. roadways every year. 7,000 of them are children. And yet, autonomous vehicles pulls in the teens. We have no tolerance for mechanical failure, and we have exceptional tolerance for human failure. This is pretty strange, although it serves some purposes. For example, planes don't fall out of the sky, buildings don't fall over, and on the large part, we can trust that machines will always work. The problem is that doesn't risk adjust very well. And we're going to have to figure out very soon what are the things that we're willing to let machines do on our behalf. For example, we all know that the U.S. court system is totally messed up. It's backlogged for months, if not years, in many cases. What about automating small claims? Obviously, I'm going to tell you that I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, what about low-level criminal and misdemeanor cases? These are going to be questions we're faced with. And the reason we're going to be faced with them very soon is that the future is about to unfold much faster than the past. If ChatGPT surprised you, I'm here to say, hang on. Right now, papers are being written that propose some incredible new advancements in both computer vision, audio, speech, olfactory. Basically, every human sense is going to become part of the multimodal machine in a very, very new future. Here's how I think it's going to play out. And this one's really exciting for everyone in this room because I think you all are going to be able to comport to this and start to design how you're building accordingly. Right now, we're in a phase one of enhanced applications. The idea of enhanced applications is that if you want to use AI, you open your phone, you open your laptop, and you use an app that's powered by AI. There are an increasing number of WordPress plugins that support this activity. This works pretty well, and quite honestly is like a very convenient way to explore this and utilize this technology. Phase two, which is pretty fascinating, is the idea of LLM-powered agents. If you haven't heard about agents, you will very soon, and this is going to become a very common theme. Basically, what's going to happen in the very near future is that we are going to give commands to machines, and they're going to execute them across our applications. The nice thing about this is it doesn't actually require that we reinvent our desktop or our laptop or the apps that we use. It'll just mean that we actually don't have to do things inside those apps that we've come to expect. You might be able to say to an agent, much like you might say to an assistant designer, hey, can you make that web page compatible with Android? And instead of having to do something yourself, it will simply execute that command. Now, phase three is really interesting. And phase three is what I call the AI-powered operating system. This one's a bit harder to imagine. And quite honestly, I understand if people here don't accept this, but I basically think AI becomes an operating system and works a whole lot more like a utility, like the electrical grid or the internet. And in that world, all of our devices basically plug into it and connect to this grid, which again looks much more like the internet than anything else. To that end, I think AI becomes a utility and we start regarding it as one. And in the same way that Ben Franklin didn't make a lot of money for inventing electricity, I think that we can safely assume that there isn't some technological hegemony or monolithic future. I think that the discovery of sciences has proven over and over again that the value ultimately accrues to the masses, in the same way that Einstein doesn't collect a royalty on everything in aerospace, Marie Curie doesn't collect a royalty on radiology. I think we can basically expect that there will be a massive distribution of the value that accrues in this ecosystem. Now, here's where I tell you how AI could complicate our lives. And I'm going to tell you things in order by which I think they are likely to happen. And quite honestly, the order in which I lose sleep over them. And the first, and honestly the scariest thing and the thing I worry most about, is idiocracy. I borrow this term from a really funny Luke Wilson movie in which a very dumb person wakes up in the future and turns out to be exceptionally brilliant. Now, this is obviously dystopian and post-apocalyptic, and I just warned you about consuming that content. But it actually sends a pretty interesting message, which is that it seems like we could eventually find ourselves having solved most of our problems and our brains simply devolving. And if you want to know what this looks like in the realest sense, watch one of your friends consume TikTok for 4 hours. Just look at the expression behind their eyes when they pick their head up from their phone. That amount of screen time we know is contributing to some really strange neurological activity. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but I think it very well could. And one of the ways that I encourage people to solve for it is simply to turn off their phones more and go outside. Now, I know I'm talking to a bunch of developers, and I'm not suggesting that your jobs are inherently making you dumb. I spend a lot of time in front of my computer. My challenge to everyone is just to reconsider how you're using your free time so that we start to, as much as we can, divorce our identities from our screens. The second thing, speaking of identities, is this idea of job displacement. Obviously, we present a massive risk if we solve all of our problems and we simply don't need to think very hard anymore. But there's a similar risk associated with jobs. And it has less to do with whether or not we will all work. I'm here to tell you I think we will all work as much or as little as we want. Every technological revolution sees a net increase of 50% jobs per capita. It's just an incredible amount of new work to go around after we invent new tools to use. And in many cases, the jobs pay more and are safer. The problem is not, therefore, job displacement. If you are a mill worker following the Industrial Revolution and someone said, hey, your mill is shutting down, but don't worry, you can go work in a factory, you might say to them, I don't want that. I'm a mill worker. It's not about the quality of my job. It's about my identity. And I think in large part, we have basically as a species become so convinced that our job is inextricably attached to our identity that what we aren't facing is a job crisis, We're facing an identity displacement crisis. We are quickly facing a world in which our jobs change so radically, so frequently, that we can't attach purpose or value to those things. And in that world, it becomes much less about satisfying our basic needs. Those will be satisfied and then some. As I described, it's a future of abundance. The real risk is that we actually just struggle in this world to find purpose because we've long found it in our work. And the third risk, and the one I want to talk a little bit about, is existentialism. And existentialism can be explained in a very simple way, which is if I put wheels on this Apple AirPod Pro case, I'm not a mechanical engineer, but someone out there might be, and we sent it off into the world, having trained it on a very simple task, which is to get me a water bottle. And it comes back with a water bottle, and it's completed its task, and I am drinking the water. Well, I don't actually know what happened out in the world. And it could be pretty chaotic. There could be water strewn everywhere. A door could be broken in. Someone who used to be holding my water could be huddled in the corner or desperately searching for their water. This is what we describe as the alignment problem. And the alignment problem simply asks the question, can we train a machine to be effective at completing a task and concern itself with human values and the human experience? Now, this is best observed in nature as the parenting problem. Can we raise our children to be brave and effective and courageous and cunning and sympathetic and empathetic and kind and caring? It's a really incredible balance that every parent is forced to strike all the time. And it's not sufficient to say to your child, follow all the rules, nor is it sufficient to say to a machine, follow all the rules. This doesn't build interesting, effective, capable people and machines. And in fact, almost definitionally, it breaks everything. It's much more important to raise our children, much like it is to train our machines, with nuance, to make really interesting calculations every millisecond about the things they're doing and how it affects them and other people. And so as a result, when you talk about the alignment problem, or rather when you talk about existentialism, when someone says to you, our machine's going to kill us, the real risk is not that machines wake up one day and say, I want to put every human in a cage. The real risk is that we start assigning tasks to machines that have really negative unintended consequences. And the machines, because they aren't aligned, can't actually appreciate the cost of their actions. And this is the way to frame the existentialism question with your friends so that when people talk about it, you don't go off the rails imagining a Skynet world. Speaking of which, I have very smart friends who have regularly asked me if Skynet is real. And I'm here to say and remind all of you, that is a film designed to make money. That is not actually a scientific theory. Now, this is where I tell you my favorite part, how AI is going to massively reduce suffering and increase joy in unimaginable ways. And the first thing, and I think the coolest thing that's going to happen very soon, that's going to feel like a Wright brothers moment, is we are about to have major breakthroughs scientifically. We are going to cure cancer. We are going to cure neurodegenerative diseases. We are probably going to solve fusion in the next 5 years, quantum computing and nanotechnology shortly thereafter. It's going to happen, and it's going to be incredible. And what that leads to in terms of the reduction in human suffering is almost unimaginable. I also think that one of these breakthroughs begets many more, in the same way that the Wright brothers' flight took our eyes to space and made us wonder, could we ever go to the moon? Imagine explaining a moon landing to someone in 1800. Inconceivable, impossible. Similarly, I think there are moments today that will be impossible to understand in 20 years. The next thing that's going to happen is incredible breakthroughs in worker productivity and job satisfaction. Now, I know this flies a little bit in the face of job displacement and identity displacement, but what I'm basically proposing is that our jobs are actually, as long as we can accept that they're changing, going to get much, much better. All of the computational cruft that most people here are forced to do, and there is plenty of work in your day-to-day job that I know you don't like, most of that is going to go away. I think most of what's going to happen and most of what we're going to be left with as humans is the humanistic stuff. The stuff that machines inherently don't understand. Aesthetics, communication, collaboration, trust. These are the things that actually define the human experience in ways that machines cannot adapt to, certainly not anytime soon. And these are, for the most part, the things that you all love doing. When you describe what you love about your job, it's probably often creating something, helping someone build their own vision, less hammering on a keyboard, tweaking a very specific frame or a very specific pixel or cell. Now, Maybe you like doing that. And I'm here to say you may be affected more so than others by this idea of identity displacement. I'm still going to argue that we are much more fulfilled, satisfying less computational work. The third thing is I think we're about to experience a massive deflationary event. For a long time, building a website was reserved for only the elite, the exceptionally wealthy, or the very technically talented. Thanks to products like WordPress, now anyone can build a website. That's going to happen at scale over and over across industries, basically for the rest of human history. And as a result, the cost of goods and services is going to come way down, and the access to most things that people consider luxuries today is going to accelerate to the extent where we might consider almost everything a staple. And the fourth thing, and I think the most exciting and the most interesting thing that AI will bring us is time. I think we're all about to get a whole lot more time. And this is going to be interesting and scary because I think a lot of people aren't actually prepared for the amount of time they're about to get. And we already observed that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are doing some pretty strange things with their free time, namely spending most of it in front of screens. I am particularly interested to see what we are capable of doing when, after the AI revolution, we've discovered that we are more human, not less. Lastly, I think we're going to achieve AGI by 2030. It seems to me at this point probable that AGI arrives as a result of the transformer and that we start to realize some of these incredible breakthroughs in the next 5 years. Now, there are reasons that we might not, and the three of them are a compute deficit, an energy deficit, and policy. We might just stymie innovation. But notwithstanding a resource failure, I think that the transformer gets us here. It's becoming much less of a hot take. A lot of industry insiders will agree. And ultimately, my challenge to everyone is really consider what the future holds because I think it's going to come at you much faster than you fully appreciate. Thank you all so much for spending time with me today. I'm really excited to watch the world unfold together. Special thanks to WP Engine for putting on this event, and special thanks to all of you for listening.